Hi guys, so now we're going to be live with Dr. Narendra Jadhav, who is a nominated member of parliament of the Rajya Sabha, and I'm going to look at my notes while I read this out because he's got quite an introduction. So he is an economist. He's been the chief economist of the RBI, a member of the Planning Commission and a member of the National Advisory. 36 books, sir?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. 36 books, of which 20 are on B.R. Ambedkar.
It is.
Absolutely. So let's begin with another kind of introduction as well. So you're going to be sitting today with me, Taruni, and with Dr. Narendra, because we're going to be talking about the idea of dropping surnames to attempt to achieve a truly caste-free society. So, sir, about calling you just Dr. Narendra, you seem to have a similarity with another very, very famous Narendra in the country then.
Yes, it is. In fact, if my surname is dropped, my name would become identical with the Honorable Prime Minister of the country, yes. Narendra Damodar Das. My father's name was Damodar, so if my surname is dropped, my name becomes Narendra Damodar, while the Honorable Prime Minister's name is Narendra Damodar Das.
There's also a bit of a resemblance there, so I'm thinking there may be a little bit of confusion if this was to actually happen. So, sir, let's begin with the idea that we're here to discuss, which is the fact that you said that you're seriously considering proposing a private member's bill to the Rajya Sabha to outlaw surnames in order to create a casteless society.
That's correct.
Before we move on to the actual logistics of something like that, could you talk a little bit about where the idea of, what the ideology behind this is? Why you think that surnames in general should be removed?
Let me explain. We have the caste system which has been hampering our economic growth for a very long time. A very large mass of society has been subject to caste-based discrimination for hundreds of years. And the recent incidents about Dalit atrocities again show the deep-rooted malaise that we have in our social system. Basically, when we get together as Indians, what are the obvious things that we talk about when we meet for the first time? We ask each other's name, then we ask, "Aap kahan ke rehne wale hai?" All those things. Yeah. Basically, it amounts to asking a question, what is your caste? And the caste is typically, not necessarily, but typically comes out of the surname. This is creating a kind of caste consciousness, deep-rooted caste consciousness, which is behind all the atrocities on Dalits which are taking place now. So I think we have to move out. There are lots of people who believe that the caste system is gone, it is nowhere. I disagree completely. Caste system has not gone, it has strengthened over a period of time, regrettably. What has happened is that earlier, the caste system was in a blatant form. In some parts of the country, the scheduled caste, what we call scheduled caste or Dalits, they had to wear earthen pots, clay pots around their neck to prevent their spit from polluting the ground. They had to tie a broom around their neck to prevent their shadow from polluting the ground. So we have seen something horrible over a long period of time. Now that kind of caste system is no longer there. However, it has taken caste system has taken a more sophisticated form. Now it resides in the mindset of the people, and I believe that in this sophisticated form, it is more pernicious than the blatant form in which it once existed. So the idea is to come out of that and move towards creating a truly merit-based society.
Right.
To do that, I think the identity of individuals should be based on what he or she has done rather than the caste into which he or she is born. And one major move in that direction could be deleting the surnames which are indicative of caste. This is not an original idea.
Absolutely.
This is an idea which Periyar talked about. This is the idea that Dr. Ambedkar talked about. This is the idea that Babu Jagjeevan Ram talked about. So it is an old idea. What I am saying is that in the present context, it is very important that we know each other not by the caste from where we are coming from, but based on what we really are.
Right.
And one major step in that direction would be deleting the surname which is indicative of the caste that one belongs to.
Right. So you mentioned Jagjeevan Ram. His daughter, the former Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Meera Kumar, she just last month suggested the same idea, in fact, which is that Indians should give up their surnames if they're really sincere about caste equality.
Right.
So you're talking about, there are two questions I have for you.
Sure.
Coming from somebody who is part of the younger generation, who is living in an urban society, I would like you to expound a little bit on this idea of casual casteism that you're talking about. That casteism has taken on lighter, a sophisticated, tonality, something where that it seeped into our daily interactions with people, which is why I'm calling it casual casteism, akin to say casual sexism, as we call it. So, if you could elaborate a little bit for our generation. Secondly, sir, I also want
before we go to the second one, let's complete this point.
Absolutely, let's complete.
I would like to go back. I would like to go back to the debate that took place between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in the 30s. If you remember, Gandhiji was telling the youth to go to villages. Dr. Ambedkar was telling exactly opposite. Dr. Ambedkar was saying, go to the cities. And Dr. Ambedkar called villages as cesspot where you cannot be known by anything other than your caste. So he exhorted his followers to go to the cities. Why? Because in the cities, they will get the anonymity and therefore they would be known more by their work and ability and talent rather than the caste from which they are coming from. So there is a long history, and let me also tell you that this idea has actually been implemented in many parts of the country. For example, in the deep south, the caste system has changed, the names have been changed. Kamraj Nadar, whoever remembers the Nadar as his caste, because he changed his name to Kamraj. Does one know the caste of Rajnikant? Also, this is the old past, distant past. But look at more recent meaning still in 70s. In 70s, when Jananayak Jayaprakash Narayanji, when he led the movement of youth in 1974, he exhorted people to give up their names, and very large number of people deleted on their own volition, they deleted their surnames and took the name as Surendra Kumar or Narendra Kumar. Some places what they do is that instead of deleting the name which is indicative of caste, they put the name of the place where they are coming from. In the south, they put that as an initial. Elsewhere, they drop it altogether. So this is not a new idea. I think this is an idea whose time has come, and it should be widespread, because we stand as a country, as a nation, as an economy, we stand at this critical juncture from where we are going further deeper into the 21st century. We must get out of the baggage of the caste system, and one big move to get rid of that baggage of the caste system is to drop and delete the surnames.
Absolutely. So, sir, you're coming to the idea, and earlier you'd mentioned this as well. You didn't use the word meritocracy right now, but you used it earlier in when you proposed this idea in the first place. So, let's talk about meritocracy.
Of course.
One of our viewers has also asked a question. Mayank Patidar has said, hiding surnames at such a small scale will not do any good. Abolish reservations, 50% of caste-related problems will disappear. In context of that question, statement that our viewer has made, and your own beliefs on meritocracy being the way that somebody should be identified, what do you think about the reservation system that we have?
I completely disagree with my friend Mayank, who has raised this question. Dropping the reservations is not going to help getting rid of the caste system at all. The reason, why do we need reservations? We need reservations because of the innate inability of our system to be just and fair. If the system were just and fair, we don't need reservations.
Absolutely.
So we need reservations because the system is just and is not just and is unfair. The moment when we succeed in creating a system, how many examples can I give you? In fact, I believe that there is a double whammy that the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes face. On one hand, lots of people feel that too much is being done to them. Too much is being, they are too much favored, they are appeased, and too much is given to them. Fact of the matter is that very little of that has actually reached them.
Right.
Look at you look at any socio-economic indicator today. What do you see? If you look at the socio-economic indicators, on every social and economic indicator, there is a big gap between scheduled caste on one hand and the general population on the other. We have not been able to eliminate that gap. So, and why does that gap perpetuate? Why does it persist? It persists because of the innate inability of our system to be just and fair. So, not only I defend the reservation system, I strongly feel that the reservation should also be applied to the private sector. Because what is private sector? Do they not take all kinds of concessions from the government in terms of land, in terms of tax? And as a part of their social responsibility, we have to extend, we must think in terms of extending the reservation to private sector as well. So that's my position on reservation.
For all of our viewers who've just joined us, I'd like to remind you we're sitting with Dr. Narendra Jadhav, or for this discussion, Dr. Narendra, since we're talking about dropping surnames. He is a nominated member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. We're not just discussing his idea to propose a private members bill in the Rajya Sabha to boycott surnames. We're also discussing the current rise of violence and discrimination against the Dalits that India has been seeing. So on that note, let's come to the incidents that have been taking place across the country. How do you think, first, not how, but do you think that this particular government has failed in a way in their outreach to the Dalit community? And if you do believe that, then how do you think this came about?
No, I think this is there is a deeper melee that is involved in this whole thing. What has happened is this. Today, I believe that there is a kind of silent revolution taking place in our country. A large mass of society, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, who were outside the mainstream, they are now coming into the mainstream and contributing to the national economic growth. What has happened is that today you have to see in every walk of life, from say painting and sculpture to architecture to even brain surgery, neurosurgery, in every walk of life you will find some young Dalit boy or girl trying to carve out a place for himself or herself. This is nothing but a silent revolution. This is silent revolution that is taking place. Now what has happened is that because of this silent revolution, those who have traditionally held on to their special privileges, we did not call it reservation, but the special privileges. If you look at our caste system, it is based on Varnashram Vyavastha. Varnashram Vyavastha is the fourfold stratification of our society. Between, if you look at Purusha Sukta, what does it tell you? That the Purusha has created this fourfold division of people, society, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And below these four Varna are the underclass, which is divided into thousands of castes. What Dr. Ambedkar said about this is very, very important. He said that our entire social system is in the ascending order of respect and descending order of contempt. There is nothing wrong with the caste system per se, But the moment you organize the caste system as a graded inequality that Dr. Ambedkar was talking about, that's where the problem starts. So you just imagine how much damage this caste system has done to our society. You know, one American economist has done a very interesting study, which I would like to talk about. What he did was, he asked a question. Everybody knows about GDP, the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product measures the value addition by all the citizens of our country, right? All countries compute their GDP, gross domestic product. But this started in 1944-45. He asked a very interesting question. He said, what would have been the GDP of old civilization like India in the year 1? What would have been GDP of China in the year 1? And he has actually computed that, wild guesses, but based on a lot of information. And what he has come up with is very interesting. He has shown that in year 1, when the Gregorian calendar started and when Jesus Christ was born, in the year 1, India's share in the global production was as high as 31.5%, which has come down over the years. So he has computed for year 1, year 500, year 1000, year 1500, year 1600, and then onwards, a lot of other people have done. What does this show? For India, the lowest ebb of Indian economy was in 1991, where there was an unprecedented macroeconomic crisis. At that time, our share in the world global production came down to less than 3%. Now, I ask a question to you and to make everybody ask this question to themselves. What is the reason for India's share in the global production coming precipitously down from 31.5% in the year 1 to less than 3% in 1991? I asked this question to many people. Most people say that the reason is the British rule, which is an absolute nonsense. How long did the British rule us? They ruled us for only 150 years. That cannot possibly explain why India's share in the global production has come down, fallen so precipitously from 31.5% to less than 3%. The reason, as I see it, the only reason is why India's share has come down so drastically over these 1991 years is the caste system. And the logic is very simple. You don't need to be a great economist to understand that. In any society, when only 3.5% people have access to education and carve out a life for themselves, and all the remaining 96.5% people relegated to menial tasks based on the caste into which they are born, how can that society progress? How can that society maintain a high rate of growth? Just imagine, in that 96.5% people, how many Einsteins might have been born? How many Einsteins? And they were all made to do the menial job, irrespective of their talent and merit, because they were born in that caste. And therefore, you know, not only the Dalit families, the scheduled caste families have suffered, but the nation has suffered. I believe that the caste system has done irreparable damage to India's economic growth and development, and that is why we need to do something dramatic, something drastic to get rid of the caste consciousness which has brought us down. When today we are one of the fastest growing countries in the world. So that graph which has fallen is now going up. While we are on the upside of the curve, this is the time we must approach the rest of the 21st century without the baggage of the caste system, and that is where I believe that this deleting the surname would be an important, this is not the only solution, but this would be a very important solution in that direction.
I understand this point that you're saying. Also, I'd like to point out that Sir is an academic, which he's proved to us in the last answer. because you've given me a very, very academic understanding of all of this. But sir, and I come back to the question that I asked originally, do you think this particular, and this is a political question, do you think this particular government, which is a BJP government, has failed in its outreach to the Dalits?
First of all, let me clarify. I'm not a politician. I'm there in the parliament, and I'm a member of parliament, nominated member of parliament, focused on social and economic issues. I'm not a politician, and I do not really intend to get into the political issues involved, but I am interested in the social issues, economic issues. Everybody need not do politics. So, you know, people like me with so much experience in public life, when they are in the parliament, they should go beyond the party politics and focus on social and economic issues plaguing this country. And that is where I come from.
Absolutely. So, sir, on that note, I'd like to ask you another question.
Please do.
Which is, again, drawing from the question that I asked earlier, Dalit issues are in the news. It's what is happening across the country. There are a lot of atrocities being faced by Dalit people across India currently. How do you think that the Dalit issue has once again come into the limelight, not just in terms of news, but is there another caste clash happening right now, possibly because of, say, upward mobility, economic, social? What are the factors that are bringing the Dalit issue back in to the focus?
Very good question. I have two. As I said earlier, there is a silent revolution that is taking place, and Dalits or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are coming into the mainstream. The graph that I talked about, the graph which had precipitously fallen, is going up. Why is it happening? It's not happening because of the 3.5% privileged people. It is happening because people like me who were outside the mainstream are coming into the being. Now, when there is this silent revolution taking place, the traditional power structure is challenged. They are disturbed, and that is why this is leading to atrocities. And with the media reporting things, you know, this has been happening for a long time, but now the reporting is even more. Now, just look at some of the numbers. The second reason why there is apparently an increase in Dalit atrocities is this. You know, first let's look at the numbers. If you look at the numbers, what is the best way to look at the numbers? As an academic, you know, I would go to NCRB data. That is the data for National Crime Records Bureau. That is the authentic source. Now, look at crimes against scheduled caste per 100,000 population of scheduled caste. That is one good number. Now, that number has been rising, and the national average is about 22%. Now, this is very high. States wise, there is a big difference. Some states the crime rate is high, some state crime rate about the crimes against Dalits is high. In some states it is not very high. Gujarat is not on low side, but you know, you cannot look at it politically and see it is a national tragedy, and this is happening everywhere, basically because of the conflict that we have between the traditional power structure and the emerging resurgent Dalits and Adivasis. This is one aspect. Second reason why the number of incidents like Una are on the rise is this, that there is very poor access to justice for people coming from the underprivileged strata of society. I'll give you an example. You know, what is the conviction rate? For general crimes which come under Indian Penal Code, the conviction rate is as high as 45%. What is the conviction rate, I pray, for crime against Dalits? That varies between 2.5% to 18%. And the average is somewhere, it's 2.5% to 26%, and the average is 22%, which means that if there is a general crime coming under Indian Penal Code, the 45% cases the conviction takes place. When there is a crime against Dalit, in some states, including Gujarat, the crime rate, the conviction rate is as low as 3%. Now, if only 3% cases get conviction as the result of the process, I can say that in 97% of the cases, there is no justice given to them. And this lack of justice, this discrimination again is coming out of that caste consciousness. Right. Remember, you know, the system, the bureaucracy and judiciary, willy-nilly, many of them carry their caste biases in performing their duties. That is why, once again I emphasize, that we need to come out of the caste consciousness. That concept of apna admi. What is that apna admi? Apne jaat wala admi. Shame on us that in 21st century we are thinking about somebody is apna admi because he or she happens to be our community. What is this? We have to move beyond the caste consciousness and looking at everybody purely from the prism of the caste of that person. Until we come out of that, there is no way we can unleash the tremendous growth potential that our country has. And in that respect, I believe that dropping the surnames by law would be a very positive move in that direction.
So we have a lot of questions coming in for this, and we're going to be moving to my colleague Garvita, who's going to be asking some of these questions to us. Garvita, as soon as you're done, I want to bring up the idea of caste consciousness again, sir, and ask you what kind of support your proposed bill may get in Parliament. But before that, let's take some questions from our viewers.
So I'm actually taking questions from two different phones. One is from Sir's Facebook page and the other one is from the Quint's page. Sir, there's a lot of discussion on the Quint's page on the caste system. Two people, and the other person's name I can't read because it's written in Punjabi. Abhishek Pratap Nigam, and this other person wants to know the idea of why doesn't the idea of caste system base on the financial conditions of the people who are under the reserved category. So if say supposingly after they've got reservation and they've come out of their financial poverty, so to speak, why don't their children stop getting the reservations? They also want to know why the caste system is so stringent on the reserved category, so much so that the generals come in a kind of a reservation, because after the percentage of reservation are reserved for them in universities and government sector and so on. So the generals believe that they come in a kind of a reserved category. So your thoughts?
Okay, I will respond to both. First of all, the basic unit in our country, in our social system, is not the class, it is the caste. This is very, very important. Within the same economic class, it's not the same. People are in the ascending order. You know, there is the graded inequality that I talked about.
If I could just...
May I give an example?
Yeah, just one second, sir. We're just waiting for that to end. That beautiful grandfather clock behind us is telling us that time is passing. It wasn't a background score to sir's conversation, even though it may seem like it.
I would like to give an example of, a lot of people believe that why not economic consideration? It looks very appealing, you know, economic consideration. Social consideration is far more important than economic consideration. Of course, economically, they are, most of them socially underprivileged come under the economic one too. However, you know, in our country, the basic unit is social unit and not the economic unit. Can I give you a personal example?
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. I'm from Mumbai and I stayed in Mumbai for a long time. And in Mumbai also, I stay in South Mumbai, which is like Manhattan of our country. Yeah. So a nice apartment I have. And my wife was looking for, you know, hiring a domestic help. So she was interviewing a lot of people. So I stay there and the ladies, prospective candidates were coming. I remember one lady walked in, she came to my house, and when she came in, she was very nice and my wife was talking to her about potentially hiring her. Then she looked around and saw Dr. Ambedkar's photograph. She saw a Buddha statue, and you know what she asked? Are you one of those people? She asked my wife, are you one of those guys? My wife said, yes. You know what she said? She got up and stormed out, then I cannot work in your house. You just imagine my status, my financial position, but a employee, a prospective domestic help refuses to work with me or my family because she considers herself above these in the social order. She is above. That is why I say that social unit is more fundamental in the complex Indian society than economic considerations. Then the second issue was you raised was, or the friend raised was, why don't people who are among Dalits or scheduled caste, those who are well off, they should give up? I have no problem with that, but this is hypocritical. I'll tell you why. Because first of all, you're not implementing the reservation policy, and what you are saying is that they should give up. Their giving up does not change the reality for those who are less fortunate. So remember that we have to implement. I will give you another example. There is a beautiful, very, very good scheme that was introduced by Srimati Indira Gandhi in 1979. This is called Scheduled Caste Sub-Plan. The idea is that out of the total public expenditure, planned expenditure, you earmark for scheduled caste that much proportion which corresponds to their share in the total population. So our share, the Dalit share in the Indian population is 16.8%. So 16.8% of the planned expenditure should be earmarked for Dalits. Same thing applies to various states. From 1979, can you imagine, from 1979 to we are in 2016, this scheme has never been implemented anywhere near reasonable level. Nowhere. When I took over as a member planning commission, the national average implementation was only 6.5%. So instead of 16.8%, only 6.5% of the funds were earmarked for Dalits. Then Dr. Manmohan Singh appointed a committee under my chairmanship, and we gave a report, and things started changing, and now it is around 9.5%. We are still far away from 16.8%. And the kind of excuses which are told year after year, one can understand if a good scheme is not implemented immediately, it takes 1 or 2 years. We are talking about from 1979 to 2016, and it is still under 10%. This is something which the friend of yours who was asking question must remember, that we are talking a lot but doing precious little, and we need to do that, we need to improve that, not because of any altruism. We must give them more because it is in our own enlightened self-interest. Because if a large part of our society remains suppressed without opportunities, not only they are going to suffer, the country's economic growth and development is going to suffer. And that is why in the enlightened self-interest, we must do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're running out of time now.
Okay.
So, but I still have I have a lot of questions.
All
and
right.
Garvita tells me so do you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you 3 questions together. And I'd like you to give me the responses to those, but we only have 5 minutes.
Okay.
And after that, we are going to go to Garvita, and she's going to ask you the questions that our viewers have. So that's how we'll wrap this up.
All right.
So, sir, in concluding thoughts from my side, in terms of the questions I have.
5 minute meter starts from now, or
5 minute meter starts from now.
All right.
So yeah, so the final thoughts from my side, the final questions that I have. So one, you mentioned caste consciousness, which is something which is still prevalent.
Of course.
This is prevalent in all parts of society, including in the parliament,
Right.
which is where you're going to be proposing this bill.
Right.
What do you think is the kind of support that your bill will get? That's question one. Second, I wanted to ask you this earlier as well. One of my colleagues, she does not have a surname. She's never had a surname. She mentioned before I left the office that I should ask you this. She's faced a lot of trouble in bureaucratic processes because of the fact that she doesn't have a surname. Do you think that even if your bill was to pass, do you think that the structures, the supporting structures, are currently capable of dealing with a system where there are no surnames in purely practical terms? And so finally, you talked about the Dalit identity, and this is something that I'm very curious about. You talk about removing the surname, yet you also told a story about how your Dalit identity got led to a possible employee, a prospective domestic help, to say that she would not work for your family. Do you think the issue here is ridding oneself of the identity across the board? Or is the issue, or would the larger issue be solved better by ridding the perceptions of this identity? And I think that's a very important question to ask, because there are two very disparate schools of thought in this case. There is one that says own the identity and move towards changing it, versus the other that says that all identities across the board need to be equalized by removing this perception. So sir, if you could address these three questions.
First of all, first question was about the kind of response. Now, whether this bill, I propose to bring it in the form of a private member's bill in the next session of the parliament. A lot of work will have to be done before it goes there.
Of which only 15 have passed. So it's also very rare for a private member's bill to pass.
But the idea really is, of course, I'll be very happy if it actually gets passed. But the idea is to create a national debate on this subject.
Right.
Now, what is the response that I'm getting? It's hard to say. A lot of work needs to be done. But I can tell you, without naming, or if you want, I can even name several leaders of various different parties. If you want, I can name them.
Please name them, sir.
Okay. I was very happy. Two national leaders of two different parties. Arun Jaitley, the Honorable Finance Minister, walked up to me in the Central Hall and said, if and when your bill comes, I want to be the first one to support it. Second one, Mr. Yechuri. Yechuri came to me, again Communist Party. There is no politics involved here. So Yechuri ji came to me and he said, I read the report and this is a wonderful idea. He asked me, do you know my surname? I said, I know. I don't. So he told me my surname was Rao and I dropped my surname precisely for this consideration, to which of course I pointed out that he said that all communist leaders dropped their surnames in South. I said there was one exception, that was Nambudripad, but others, many of the leaders, left leaders from South, they have dropped their names. The initial response is phenomenal, very good. That doesn't mean it will automatically get passed. I will have to build consensus around it and get as much support as I can. That's one. Second question was about identity, or that was the third one. What was the second?
The second question was about whether the supporting structures of the bureaucracy can actually handle something like this.
No, we will have to create a support system for this. Nothing is automatic. You referred to a friend of yours and she talked about the administrative difficulties. Absolutely. We do not have to delete the surname. What we need to do is, the surnames which are indicative of caste, they should be deleted and they should be replaced. In case we insist on a surname, use the place where you are coming from. So my surname can become Ozarkar because Ozar is my village in Nasik. So you can have, or Punekar because I like Pune. So you can take any name, but it should be oriented towards place rather than a name which is indicative of caste. By the way, let me also remind you, until my father's generation, do you know, for me and millions of others, caste was the surname. My father's record in the railways where he served as a class 4 employee, his name was Damodar Runzaji Mahar. Mahar is the caste. Jadhav was a taken name later. So we never had the surname. Earlier, caste was the surname. And even today, in many cases, willy-nilly we are used to that, but the castes are surnames. The third question was about identity. One is not talking about giving up identity. In any case, I personally feel that our only identity should be that I am an Indian. What Dr. Ambedkar had said, I am Indian in the beginning and I am Indian in the end, and in the intermediate period, I am nothing but Indian. So our identity should be Indian. But if somebody insists, you know, I have no difficulty with the existence of the caste, because each caste, see, there is a scholar who has said that if we destroy the caste system, we will be destroying our country. I disagree completely. You know, each caste has its own culture, wonderful. It has even culinary traditions which are unique. So that is an example of our great diversity. So one is not talking about giving up those identities. What one is talking about is removing the basic structure which makes the caste a graded inequality form. The moment, you know, your own great pride in the caste makes you feel that anybody who has lower caste or caste is lower and this is higher, that kind of mindset has to be removed. The graded inequality part of the caste system should be removed. The diversity that is contained in different castes should be retained. It is the graded inequality and forcing people to take occupations based on their caste is something that I am complaining about and strongly protesting against.
Right.
Take the case of Safai Karmachari, you know, manual scavengers. Why do they have to come only from a particular community? Why? Why? It has happened only in India and Pakistan, nowhere else. Why? Why can't they do anything else? How many Einsteins might have been born there? Why do they have to only, and the reservations, you know, you talked about
Yes.
reservation, whenever they show 100% reservation maintained, you know, you just classify that by class 1, class 2, class 3 and class 4, you will find that it is 100% in class 4 and 10% or 5% in class 1 category. And the average looks perfectly proper, prim and proper. So we have been cheating really in
Right.
terms of actual implementation. So those who are opposed to these should think about these considerations
Absolutely.
also.
So now, Garvita, please, let's only take, if you can, you know, crunch the questions up into maybe one or two questions.
We encompassed all the questions that our viewers had asked
Okay.
us. I'd just like to leave you, sir, with this comment which Shruti Balaji has written and in sync with the ideas that you have put forth. She says, in a society that is essentially Brahmanical, surnames are proportional to social standing
Correct.
as well as the caste. Prejudices are steeped in identity politics as well. And
Right.
she says that it's a wonderful first step towards building an inclusive society.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so happy that she thinks that way.
So we've got our viewers agreeing with you, sir, and we've had a very, very comprehensive discussion on all of this. I'm going to be signing out with Dr. Narendra here. I'm Tarani and that's Garvita.
Tarani and Garvita.
And we have Shiv behind the camera for us today. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. If you have any other questions for Dr. Jadhav, Dr. Narendra, send them in, write them here. We'll definitely send them to him and he can respond, and you'll know what he has to say.
And they can
about
also
them.
follow me on my Twitter, and my
Yes.
Twitter handle is @Dr. Jadhav.
So you can directly get in touch with him as well. Thank you very much for joining us. See you guys next time.